Hey everyone, I'm Trent Kusters, co-founder and studio director at League of Geeks, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today I've been talking with my two dear friends, Sarah and Colin Northway of Northway Games. They've just recently, as of August last year, released their game I Was a Teenage Exocolonist on Switch, PlayStation, and Steam. It's a wonderfully emotionally expressive game. It's really something, and I'm going to leave Sarah to really describe it, but it's an expansive narrative game. It has over 600,000 words in it. It tackles a lot of mature themes, but you're essentially growing up on an exo colony as refugees from Earth, and it really is something special. It's sitting in overwhelmingly positive on Steam. It's had a great reception. So we talk a lot about that game and the unique mechanics and how so much of it is contextualized in the narrative of the game and the setting. Wonderful execution and experience. But of course, as we always do, we go back to the start. We talk about how they got into games, what sparked their interest in games, how they got their start in games, whether it be Sarah at Three Rings Interactive or Colin with his flash hit Fantastic Contraption, which I'm sure some of you have sunk dozens of hours into already. We talk about then how they left their lives in San Francisco and traveled the world, literally traveled the world working as indie devs with laptops and their backpacks on their back. And they continue to work on the iterations of Fantastic Contraption and Sarah's successful series of the Rebuild games, 1, 2, and 3, but also about how they managed to, whilst doing all of that, stay on the zeitgeist of the games, I guess, medium and industry, not just culturally, but, Rebuild's a great example, was first in Flash, then it was on Rebuild 2 as a mobile, Rebuild 3 was a Kickstarter and Steam. So actually even just they're a really great sort of litmus test for the ebbs and flows of the industry as well. And we have wonderful conversations about how they actually managed to do that and how they lived their life out of their backpacks and still managed to make it work in indie games career. And then, of course, we talk all about I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. So there's a lot in here for everyone, and I truly do hope you enjoy the episode. So without further ado, let's get into it. Sarah, Colin, welcome.
Hello.
Thank you.
So you are you in Vancouver at the moment?
Yeah. Yes. So we just got back from 2 months in Europe, and before that, 3 months in Argentina. We are back, baby. We are traveling again. But right now, currently, we're in our house in Vancouver, and it's good to be home.
All right. Now, in the little preamble tech setup of the podcast, I pointed out, for those of you who aren't watching on YouTube but are listening to the podcast, Sarah and Colin have behind them just this beautifully painted and painterly wallpaper of a flora landscape of the woods, you would say, misty woods. Give me the story of this again, Sarah.
It's supposed to be Eden. It's supposed to be like the Garden of Eden. So it's actually got all these different plants involved that have nothing to do with each other. You'd never find them in the same place, but they just, whoever painted it just stuffed stuff together.
It's an 18th century version of the perfect perfect world.
Yes, and idealized. There's like little tiny frolicking animals in some places and stuff. And it's like this old French like woodblock print like wallpaper.
Oh, it's a woodblock, actually. Wow.
Yeah, it's actually woodblock. And I saw it in a museum.
In the Scottish National Museum.
Scottish National Museum. And they just had a few panels of it set out, and they were all like, the edges were all torn up and stuff, but they'd never actually been on a wall, so they were very pristine. And I asked them if I could get their high-res scans of it. They sent them to me, and I sat there in Photoshop.
They sent them to you as long as you promise not to send them to anybody else.
That's true. They were like, you cannot distribute these. You cannot, but you can do whatever you want. And so I put them in Photoshop and like meticulously stitched up the edges and fixed all the mistakes and got rid of all the mold and stuff. It was, it took like 30 hours or something. It was a really stupid project. And at the end, I have these giant high-res files. It's like 12 feet by 12 feet or something, that I sent off to one of those U-print things. And they just sent me a roll of and we put it up.
Wow.
But yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I do when I have time on my hands, I guess.
You have huge RPGs to make. So I'm really intrigued by this person at the museum who's just handing out. Do they have like a piece of art that I could lend as long as I don't lend it to anyone else? Do they have a library system over there? How do you ask for like something like this?
This is the second time we got into touch with somebody in the Scottish Museum system, because for Sarah's wedding ring, I wanted to have it custom designed. And so Sarah's family's from Ireland, my family's from Scotland. And so there's this rock near where my family is from in Scotland. And I was like, I want this knot from that rock, but I don't have a picture of it. So I wrote the Scottish National Trust. And I was like, do you have like a scans or like PDF of anything? And then a day later, a guy was like, I went and took a picture of it. And like, here it is for you.
He just like got in his car and drove over.
If you need anything if you need any Scottish culture, they've got you.
They're well funded and really happy to participate in whatever project is.
Really taking public service to the next level at the Scottish Museum. Well, we're here to talk about video games, and I think as what will we say, one of the most famous husband and wife indie dev couples, roaming world touring indie devs. I'm sure we've got a wonderful story ahead of us. So let's, here on the Game Maker's Notebook, we take it all the way back usually. So I'm going to speak to each of us, ask Sarah, and then I'll ask Colin. What was the first thing that sparked your love for video games? Not necessarily, we'll get into how you got into game development, but what was that first memory, Sarah, where you engaged with video games, or they were presented to you, or it sparked something in your mind?
Yeah. That is way back.
I mean, it's way back. Yeah, it's way back. We always had, it was always PC based stuff. Yep. Like we always had computers in the house. I feel like my first memories, literally I was 3 or 4 years old, and this is in the 80s, playing there was this DuckTales game filled with like lots of mini games. And there was a Winnie the Pooh one and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they were just like these little adventure games with puzzles and mini games and random stuff. And
is that the DuckTales arcade?
No,
not the famous DuckTales
all
game.
Of that. It's just like a little
janky precursor DuckTales
point and click, pixel art, like big thing. I remember like a few years later, my dad, for some reason, got a used Amiga, and gave it to us kids, and that was like a big deal. We had a whole bunch of pirate like Amiga discs that were filled with viruses, and they all had these like just weird little games, like lots of shareware kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so those were like, honestly, they're like some of my earliest memories, but also like that's definitely how I got into the games was through those kind of things.
And what about you, Colin? What's your earliest memory of them lighting up your mind?
The first video game I ever played was my dad brought home a teletype machine. So like a printer, typewriter, mm-hmm. and then a 300 baud modem. So it was like a thing you took your rotary dial telephone off its cradle, and then you put it into this modem. It had 2 rubber docks for the phone headset. And then it talked to his office's mainframe, and we played Zork on the teletype machine. That's the first time I ever played a video game.
Holy shit.
But yeah, those 80s, like early 90s shareware days, like
Yeah,
the discs you like are trading around. You're like mailing in for discs, and you're getting like
totally.
it's so indie games. Like it was like
it really
indie games were like blossoming at that time.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Doom, like remember the first time you played like Wolfenstein and the first time you played Doom, and it was like you got it on some shareware disc because those were just like straight indie games.
Yeah, and back in the days of demos where, you know, we didn't have any money, we were like 8 years old, so you just played the demo like over and over and over. You're so good at that first level of Wolfenstein.
Yeah. I remember when I was a kid, we had a family friend who was, you know, the token computer guru family friend, and he came around and installed what is now obviously, you know, some shareware demos off some discs onto our computer to just give me some games to play. But I was watching over the shoulder as he did this. But I forgot the disc component later on, that he was bringing discs and putting them in. So for the next year or so, I basically would just go onto the computer and open up the command line and type random shit in there, thinking there were games in the computer, and that like if you would just like find the code, that you would find new games. I don't know what kind of damage I did to the
airplane,
work computer.
Jet plane.
Yeah, I played that Wolfenstein demo to death as well.
Or like Commander Keen, all that earlier id stuff too.
Yeah,
man, it was so good to be like alive and playing video game, like being a kid for all that stuff.
Yeah, really, like with some of those games as well, they came in so hard and fast, and like from different like what would you say, from like different friends or like origins and stuff, that it kind of had this weird bizarre feeling to it. Like I remember being a kid and it was like there was this game, The Living Daylights, that I played, and I can't remember what the computer was, but it was just like a green and black screen, and I would just die immediately, and I just played that over and over and over again. But it kind of had, these games had this feeling of like mystery about them, and like, you know, like you were discovering something or uncovering something. I think as a kid, that age as well, you always project so much more into them than what's there, project a bunch of fantasy onto them.
I mean, it's so funny, right? We talk about like discoverability so much now, and like Steam placement and like blah blah blah, and then to imagine like, you know, like your game distribution relies entirely on like older cousins leaving discs
and
it's your entire distribution system.
Those were the days when things like came with a manual you actually had to read, right? There was no in-game tutorial. They wouldn't tell you what anything did, and you don't get the manual when you're just sharing this.
We had Tan and Zach on from Bay 12 Games recently talking about Dwarf Fortress, and they spoke about a period where they were like, let's do the shareware thing, you know, because they're making amazing little games at home, as you can imagine, as teenagers or whatever. And they set it all up and they got ready to sell it, and they sold 0 copies. And they were like, I guess it's not for us. We'll just continue making hobby games. Yeah. All right. So
I like the idea of like going really guerrilla and starting to like to release stuff on like discs.
Yeah.
Like those like hip hop guys in subways. Just like they got their demo disc and they're just like pounding the pavement with it. Like
up the front of PAX West, offering you this.
Yeah, exactly. Like the most guerrilla you can possibly be. Just like start doing it, like just put demo discs in people's hands.
Yeah. Now that's indie.
That's indie. That's indie.
That's indie, man. So we've spoken about how you were inspired by video games or your first memory of them. But Sarah, tell us a story about how you actually got into game development. Like, what age were you when you first started thinking like, oh, okay, this is something that I actually might want to do as a job, or can I make a living out of this? And what was the progression to making your first sort of commercial game or your first commercial games job?
It took me a long time to actually believe that I could do it commercially. Like, you know, in my teens, I was making a lot of mods, right? I think that's how most people start these days too. Yep. Modding like Doom and Quake and stuff. And Warcraft, that was a great one. But yeah, you know, I didn't foresee a career in video games at that time. Like I was kind of like, if I got into video games, I'd be like a game tester or something. Like I didn't really imagine myself making them. And even through like university, like, you know, made some games that were almost releasable kind of things, but still just didn't think about it being commercial. It really wasn't until, I don't know. What was the first thing that started it?
I mean, 3 Rings gig, really, right?
No, it was a little bit before that. But yeah, that was the first time I actually did commercial games. So I had been just making games for fun for a while. I was a programmer now. This is like my early 20s. And I still thought the games industry was not a place that was for me. Here in Vancouver, Canada, the biggest company was EA Sports. And I'm just not into sports games. And, I saw how they would kind of like, chew up people and you never get weekends and stuff there. This is, of course, in the early noughts. I just wasn't interested in that kind of lifestyle. Shareware had kind of dried up at that point too. But I still sort of just wanted to do it. And so I was making stuff in my spare time. And at some point, I just sent all of it to a company in California that was making the Three Rings design, that was making these like puzzle pirates and these cool online multiplayer things. And and I was just like, how about give me a job? And like crazily they did. Like I think I applied to them and like one other company. And it actually worked out. Yeah. I was so particular because I really still didn't believe that the games industry and me were compatible. I figured I would just be making stuff and releasing it for free. Like that was just how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out. And then shortly after that, you can tell your side of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Three Rings is in San Francisco. So we moved to San Francisco. Sarah made Beeble World, which is the game that got her hired at Three Rings while we were in Thailand.
Yeah.
So we had like been traveling. We already we were like in Thailand and Japan.
Yeah.
And, I think like basically, basically all indies are like people who make games have been just making games since since like an early age.
Yeah.
I feel like
the same, Colin.
it's like early on.
You were just slapping games together when you were a teenager and stuff as well?
Yeah. Like I had a comp sci course that was, my dad was a computer scientist, hence like the Zork game.
Yeah.
And my mom was a biologist. So I was like, well, I'm not going to do computer science or biology. That's the only thing I know. I like had to take this like high school comp sci class. And it was like, all right. My brain is just like, in the class, there was like me, 30 people, and Andy Moore. Do you know Andy? It's like
Andy
another
Moore?
Andy.
Yeah. You went to school with Andy Moore. Amazing.
So Andy and I, Andy
Moore and I,
Andy Moore from like, who like worked on with us on Contraption and made
from Radial Games.
Yeah, Radial Games. And oh
we
my God,
we were all roommates.
What's Andy's airplane game?
We were all roommates together.
Yeah. But there's like 30 students, and like Andy and I just like clicked immediately. We were both like extremely good at programming. Didn't have to put any work. It was just like really easy. So I was like, okay, clearly I'm just going to do this then. Like started making games, and then we moved to San Francisco because Sarah got the gig at Three Rings. And I also felt the same way about the game industry. That like, it's just not, it's going to be like too uncomfortable and
it's the wrong
intense,
vibe.
And that you would be like a small cog, I was like, I'm going to be doing the programming to make menus go swoosh, and that's it. And I was just not interested in being like that person.
So instead in San Francisco, I found a gig as a web developer making websites for lawyers, which was like incredibly boring.
Yeah, the exact opposite of my like highfalutin like video game crazy indie team. Also, the Three Rings office was decorated like a steampunk submarine.
You seriously have to look it up.
Absolutely whimsical place to work that you could imagine. And Colin's like down the street in this like lawyer's website kind of thing.
You gotta look up, Google image search Three Rings office. It's like phenomenal. There's like hidden rooms and shit. It's
really
amazing.
Yeah, we'll get an image up on the podcast.
Yeah.
But so he was a little bored and maybe a little jealous.
Yeah. Which is a good combination actually, because if you're really bored, all that creative energy just like has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So it just like builds up and builds up. And then I started playing Flash games because this was like really in their good, nice, juicy Flash
like
game
2007, 2008.
Yeah, 2006, kind of. Yeah. 2006, 2007.
And it's right before like 2006, 2007 was what? 2007 was Braid, like John released Braid. So it was like the indie renaissance.
2008, I think Braid probably released in 2008.
Yeah, maybe
somewhere.
Yeah. But it's like that indie publishing is like shifting or just coming. It's just on the horizon, just ahead of this, right?
Yeah. It was like perfect timing. The 2007, 2008 was like, that was like Castle Crashers, and World of Goo and Braid were all like those 3 platform like
the original
indie games.
Spelunky.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, I
game
mean,
changes. Also,
so,
Paul, side note, the original Spelunky, for folks who aren't aware, Colin of the Northways is Colin in Spelunky. I always still play as Colin.
Love it. Yeah, that's
still to this day.
Jump slightly higher.
What was
jump
that?
Slightly higher if you play as Colin.
Amazing. Just like in real life as well.
Just like in real life, exactly.
All right, so you're making websites for lawyers, but you're getting into Flash games.
Yeah. So I spend my spare time. I get this like Flash game in my head, and it's really like, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and he gets like
the mashed potato.
He gets obsessed and he builds out like mashed potato. He does nothing in his life but build that mashed potato mountain. So the original game, Fantastic Contraption, was like real mashed potato mountain shit for me. It was like 4 months. It only took 4 months, but it was like day and night, like outside of work. It was like lunch break, soon as I get home.
Wow.
Like all into the night, just like cranking on it. And then as a whim, I made it like demo with like $10. You could pay me through PayPal to like get the full version. Yeah. And then when I released that, it's like took a couple weeks to start paying me more than my job was paying me.
Yeah. Still, a couple of weeks is pretty good to replace your lawyer.
Dude, it's bananas.
Job.
It's bananas.
It got picked up by Stumbled
Upon.
Oh, that it was like a toolbar that you'd put in your browser.
I forgot about that website. Ridiculous. Yeah. So you're just saying, so for our listeners who may not know, Stumbled Upon was like a toolbar or a website that you could go on and back in the mid 2000s, and you would just press like next, and it would take you to some random cool website,
some link to something, and people would like upvote it or whatever.
And so
I wrote a blog post on like the first like 5,000 hits. So if you go somewhere out there's a blog post on like how the internet in 2007 like blew up Fantastic Contraption.
It's a different time.
Wow. So I didn't know, Colin, that Fantastic Contraption was like your first sort of like serious
first released
project.
First released game. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, there you go. Straight out the park. No pressure for the next one or anything.
I feel like that's kind of a common indie game story that like the chances are you're going to fail. Occasionally people get lucky, and then the people who go on to continue to make indie games are the ones that just happen to get lucky, and the first couple things they do like worked out. So I think that's like kind of a common story. It's like, well, I lucked out with the first one, so now I'm an indie game developer.
Wow. Yeah, I think I remember seeing a statistic. I can't remember if it was from the Indie Mega Booth, the study that was done on that, or it was something else. So I won't attribute it to it, but it was something like whatever these studios went through for their first game, 90% of them weren't around for their second. Like either first game didn't pan out or they disbanded, but just to get a second game going was like, you're down to like the 10% essentially. The thinning happened after the first game. Probably some people just went, that was pretty hard. Let's not do that again.
Chance of success is just low, man. That's just how it is.
Hit-driven business.
And it's always harder than you think it's going to be too.
Which is an advantage, though. It's an advantage early because now I'm like, I know how hard it is, and I'm like, start a new game. It's going to be so hard.
So you've got Fantastic Contraption out there. It's starting to pay for your own job. Sarah, and I don't mean this in a like jealousy sense, but I mean like as his partner, you got your own video games job, and now there's this game that's coming in and dumping cash on you both. Like what was the vibe at the time, and what were the conversations like about next steps and everything?
I was absolutely thrilled. I was very, very excited about it. I'd helped a tiny bit with like some menu stuff, and I'd drawn the graphics and stuff, but there's, it was an extremely graphics light game. But then we had server problems. That was the thing, because it was getting way too many hits, and you could save your stuff online. Maybe I'd written the server. I can't remember. It was just a MySQL thing. It was like PHP MySQL. I think you wrote it. Yeah. But it was very like hard to extend. And I remember, I'd be talking with Colin during the day and on chat, and I came home one day and he was just like lying on the bed in the fetal position, just being like, the server crashed again. And like, could not handle the responsibility of
a server.
success.
I bet.
Yeah, it was like he just like absolutely broke.
Yeah.
And I just did not have time at the time. Like I was, like my job was like quite demanding and very creative, and I just like wanted to help, but yeah, I wasn't sure about, like, he quit his job shortly after, right?
Yeah.
Like it didn't take him very long to be like, I could do this, let's do this thing full time instead. But yeah, psychologically, the stress,
stressful.
he could not handle the stress.
Games still stress me out. Like I hate releasing things.
Yeah, we still,
probably because the Contraption release was so stressful.
And I still think the best way that we work is when I can come in and like take over a little more of the release process part of the game, because I just don't get the same stress that he does. Yeah.
Colin just hugged Sarah, everybody, if you're video. So,
but it's just that I'm not as upset about it. Like the server's down. It's like, we're like losing money, but like people will probably just come buy it later. Like, it's not a big deal.
It is a full on. And I think it's one of the things that like, it's the classic thing. Like a lot of people, think about failure or what they're going to do or whatever, but it's actually like planning for success sometimes is the other side of the coin. It's like success also comes with its huge amount of problems, like whether it's because it creates opportunities and opportunities distract, or because there are so many people on your servers and it's crashing the servers and stressing you out, putting you in a fetal position on the bed, worrying about that. Like it's a full on time.
Good problems to have are still like fucking problems.
Exactly.
You still have to solve them.
Still problem.
Yeah. So how long did this sort of go on for? Tell me about like either what came next or actually, before we go on, let's explain to people, Colin, what Fantastic Contraption is, because I know a huge beloved AAA game has recently stolen your idea for Fantastic Contraption. So explain to everyone what the game is.
You play Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and then it's essentially just knocked me off. Contraption was a building game in 2007, a Flash building game in 2007, 2008. So you stick like wheels and rods together to make contraptions that try to do things. And it turned out to be just like the limited tool set turned out to be extraordinarily expressive. Like if you Google like Fantastic Contraption greatest hits on YouTube, the like thing, people are like still making stuff that is completely bonkers. It's totally crazy.
Yeah, it's like one of those Flash classics that just have almost endless possibilities, like Polybridge or some of these physics driven, like where the creativity is just off the charts and the expression space, like you say. Okay, so the question that I was going to ask before that is, what came next? Like, you've got Fantastic Contraption, it's out there. What do you do now that you've got this game? Once you've getting over the server issues, what's the sort of next steps for the Northways here?
Then it was just Sarah's turn to make a hit game.
Yeah.
So I did eventually also quit my job because this seemed like the route that we should go. I stuck around until we finished our project, and then the other thing was that we wanted to start traveling again. We saved up what we could. So we were just like, we're going to travel the world and we're just going to like continue making games. So like, I'll make a Flash game next and we'll like see where it goes. And it worked out, and we did it for like 5 years continuously.
Our story makes it sound way too easy. I mean, part of it is like 2007, 2008 was like real fertile ground. It was a good time to be making games.
Yeah. And we were making like short games. Like not every game was a success, but they all took less than 6 months or whatever at the start, which is a better way to do it when you're starting out and you really are like figuring things out. So the game that I made was called Rebuild, and it was like a city builder, except you're rebuilding a city that's been destroyed by zombies, and there's zombies coming in from all sides trying to get you. And it's super narrative, though. It's like a lot of the actions are told with little like tiny choose your own adventure snippets where it's like, oh, some scavengers come and they want to trade food. Do you trade food, or what do you do? And like, you have to deal with like the happiness of your little city and a lot of post-apocalyptic kind of genre stuff. And people loved it. It was like the #1 game on Congregate for years. So it also just super did well. And part of that, again, was just like, we were just there in the early days of Flash. And You could just stick it in your browser. Anyone in the world could play it for free. There'd be an ad or whatever on Congregate, but like anyone could just jump in, immediately start playing. And that was unheard of, like a brand new thing for games.
There's something like 1% of all of Taiwan had played Fantastic Contraption or something.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
The numbers are like insane.
Yeah, totally. Wow. Amazing. We traveled and we made these Flash games. Colin worked on a sequel. He actually ended up with the publisher for the original Fantastic Contraption.
To mobile, because iPhone came out around that time, so In Exile did the mobile version, and then like a sequel to Fantastic Contraption on mobile. Early mobile game.
Right, that was
you can make money like that at the time.
2010 was like the mobile explosion, so we happened to be right there for that as well. We just got lucky with our timing. I'm sure there are more technologies coming in the future, but I feel like one of the biggest strengths of indie developers is that we can just like jump on these crazy new techs and be like, I'm going to make a game for a phone. How nuts is that?
Yeah, totally. Like the agility of being smaller and the scope of our indie titles generally being smaller and everything as well is like it just enables that fast deployment, like you're saying, Sarah, to these new sort of frontiers in game development. And it's just amazing to see the sort of success that some folks saw, like our contemporaries from around that era as well, just by saying like, okay, I have my game, I'm put it on Steam, and I'm one of the 10 indie games that are on Steam right now alongside Counter-Strike and Half-Life and everything. It's like, the Valve money hose just got pointed at them at a particular point in time.
Yeah, Xbox Live Arcade or whatever. Those were.
We never got one of the big money hoses. We didn't get like an Xbox money hose or like a Sony money hose.
You got the money watering can.
Yeah. We got like good timing. Some like
some
we're in a good drinking. We had a good drinking fountain, good reliable drinking fountain.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Tell me a little bit about this traveling, because I remember when I met you, I think you were just like, it was like coming towards the end of your huge travel period, but you were very much known as like the nomadic indie development duo. So where did you go? How did you make that work? Like you said, Colin, you feel like it sounds like you made it easy, but like what was involved and where'd you go and how did you make it work?
We went everywhere but Australia.
Which I take personal offense to.
We still haven't gone to Australia. Maybe next year, maybe. The first thing was that we were 100% traveling. Like we just sold everything that we owned. We had no apartment that we were paying rent on. We had no anything. We just left. We put our laptops in our backpacks and we just went, which is, for us, it was the only way that we could do it and afford it for sure. We're trying to now do it while having like a mortgage, and it's just like, it's a very different thing. And we're like not allowed to rent this place out while we're gone. And it's a totally different situation than being like 20 somethings with backpacks. But it was a really wonderful, good time. You can stay in most countries for 90 days with no questions asked. There's questions, but we
answer them correctly.
We answer them by saying like, no, we are not working in this country. You can just spend it all in one place, which is what we would do. So instead of, hopping city to city, you just pick one city, one house, you get a good deal on rent. You go find those little niches and figure out how people rent apartments there. You get a place for 3 months and you get bored. And that's how you actually get some work done. So you get to know one little corner of the world for 3 months or so and then move on.
Yeah, I love traveling that way. Admittedly, I haven't done the live overseas, travel, spend 3 months in a place. But when I do travel, I like to go for a chunk of time at once, say a month, take it off from the studio or something, turn my phone off, delete Slack, tell people not to message me unless someone dies or whatever. And then I try and spend as much time in one place or two places as possible, as opposed to trying to soak it all up. I feel that, you just said, Sarah, that, get to know a place or, know it stay there until you're kind of bored. And I feel that there's something really, it's not until you experience that kind of routine of being in a place that you actually truly start to know it, like when you're getting up in the morning, getting your coffee from the same place, sort of like when you start to, like, even for just the slightest bit, like ingratiate yourself with the local community or the mode of living there. It's such a beautiful way to experience another city.
Yeah, and there were indie games communities like everywhere we went.
The indie passport, right?
Yeah, it was so wonderful. We just had instant friends anywhere. We're just like, hey guys, we make games too. And they're like, whoa, you do? So few people do. Come on in.
Yeah.
Right. There were just like weren't that many indie devs in those years too. So everyone was like desperate for news from the outside world.
Yeah.
And yeah, like everywhere we went, there was some kind of like small community forming that was super happy to engage with us. And they also often speak English, which you just kind of have to do if you're a programmer in most of the world.
Of course, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So like also very handy to have, because we are terrible with languages. Tried, but
the indie passport is really a thing. It's amazing how much, like, it can, you can just lob yourself, into a community somewhere else. I remember I was in Israel at one point and, hung out with some devs there. And then I was like, I want to go into Palestine. And I just got in touch with Torsten from AIAS. And he was like, yeah, I know some people, and put me in touch with a guy called Muhammad, and like got me a taxi into Palestine. And we went into Ramallah, and literally like 15 game developers came out, and we all had this huge lunch. And then for the next 3 days, they like just took us out all over the place. We're playing cards. They were showing us around, out to dinner, to lunch with their family and friends. And it was just incredible. Like on the opposite side of the world there for 4 days. And the indie community just came out. Cause like you say, like news from the outside world, whether it's in Utrecht or Palestine or, San Francisco, there is like a community there ready to, just embrace developers who are in from out of town. It's great stuff.
I love that about indie game devs is like, I'm like, technically we're all in competition with each other, but like nobody acts that way.
It never feels that way.
We're like, it's all just like instant friends. Everyone's trying to help everybody out. Like everyone's always down for a beer. It's like the most wonderful community to be a part of.
It has no right being that wonderful as well.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's so good.
It's true.
So, Sarah, you quit your job at Three Rings. What were you working on at Three Rings over there? What were the games you were making?
So I came on to Puzzle Pirates, which had been going for a while. It was a really cool little. It was like an MMO where you get ships. It was all like pixel art and really adorable. But all of the interactions with the world are done with like little mini games, little match threes, little different cute games. But then after that, I was on a game called World, like WHI, like in a blender.
Oh,
World.
right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Which was kind of like Second Life in Flash was sort of the idea. Absolutely before its time. I don't know when its time will ever come. But, it was a beautiful thing. I absolutely loved that game and that team and that company. Yeah. It was really wonderful. It did not do well at all. The biggest problem was that the people who loved it were just these teenagers who had no money to spend on it. So they were super active. And the stuff that they made, because it was all about community-driven content, including you could program in it, you could have games, you could have little things that interacted with each other because it was all Flash, and we just had a sandbox where you could run Flash code. So they had really cool avatars that like did all kinds of neat stuff. But yeah, they also made a lot of janky meme stuff that was like a turnoff for new players. And so you kind of walk into one of these spaces that's their spaces, and they're just filled with like loud noises and stuff, and they're all laughing hilariously. They love it, but like
it's like a Tumblr version of Habbo Hotel. Or
it was, yes.
It's actually like really good.
It was totally like that. It is not. We tried to attract, we were trying to get artists and programmers and stuff, but these were the guys who just loved it and really understood it. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't know. Yeah. So it was really cool though. I wrote a couple games. You did too, right? We just made some side Flash games for it, and they had a little monetization thing where you could get paid out as a creator, and we actually
I hear what you mean about it being ahead of its time. Like this, you're describing Roblox as well, right?
Yeah, it was Roblox. Yeah, it was Roblox. Yeah, right. No, you're right. Yeah. It was Roblox. It was absolutely Roblox.
But it's 2D.
2D Flash,
2.5D,
web-based. Which should make it more accessible. But
there are a lot of people at that time as well trying to do that thing as well. Like there are a lot of folks that had sort of seen that same thing. I remember Kato was working on a game as well. I remember with the crew that now have gone on to make Slack, right? Like there was that 2D Flash game that they were making, and Slack was the little internal communication tool or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember Google started making one. It was like one of those things very similar. And then a year later, Google killed it. And then I remember people were like, "Oh, that's good. We don't have to compete with Google anymore." Oh, wait, does that mean this will never be successful because Google thinks it's not going to be successful?
Yeah, that's it. What do they know that we don't know yet? All right, okay. So
I want to mention briefly, because that Sarah made a card game for that called Laws and Disorder.
That's right. Yes, Three Rings had a very liberal thing, like Flex Fridays or whatever, where you could work on something for the company, but like whatever your own project was. And I made a cool card game.
And where can you buy Laws and Disorder now? If you go to
GameCraft,
if you go to GameCraft,
I made a physical version of it as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
and you said we Laws of Disorder or Laws and Disorder? Or?
Laws and Disorder.
Yeah,
because it's a silly card game where you're like making laws on the table with like the cards in your hand. You kind of string them together to make a sentence, but it'll say like, Colin has to pay me 1 coin, and then you go around the table and the laws fire, and then you can change the laws and twist them. It's a fun little game. It's really fun. We actually got into, I forgot to mention this, we were into board game design.
Oh, that's true.
Again, just like never published anything, never considered, like the idea of actually like shipping a board game seemed like a nightmare because, all the logistics of it, but super fun to make. So we had a play group.
Yeah, back in university, we had a design your own board game night, like before anyone was like, everyone was still in school.
Yeah.
And so everyone would bring like a board game you design, and we'd play them all. And like, it was super fun because they were all broken. So it'd be like a race to break the game. First one to break the game would always win.
So Laws and Disorder actually came out of that. And then years later, I made a version in World of it. Yeah.
And physical. So you can go to gamecrafters.com and buy Sarah's card game, Laws and Disorder.
Yes. I also made a physical version kind of the I Was a Teenage Exocolonist card game, which is
yes, actually, I saw that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Do we have that? Can we show it to
it's in one of the drawers over there. I think I'm going to put that up on GameCrafter as well.
Oh, cool.
GameCrafter, if you don't, Gamecrafters, I think is the name. If you don't know it, is a really excellent site that makes it extremely easy to actually like make one-off board games.
Oh, wow.
So they'll print on just a huge variety of stuff. They'll do cases and boxes and all kinds of things.
Okay. We're seeing for those listening, not on YouTube, we're getting a little viewing. Colin showing us the cards from the I Was a Teenage Exocolonist board game. It's beautiful, and they're like they're like the exact cards from the game as well, right?
The cards from the game, and
they're modified to work. They're all modified to work with this.
And the game rules. There's a little games card in it that explains a different set of rules that work. But you get these nice little printed boxes and whatnot. They're not quality. Like you couldn't really like mass produce and sell to stores through them probably, but for prototyping, it's super excellent.
Yeah, wow.
So I'll make board games.
Oh yeah, go make board games, exactly. Did it ever scratch an itch when you saw the sort of the tabletop renaissance kick off with Kickstarter? Did you ever think about, should we do like a tabletop Kickstarter or something?
Very seriously. I almost
I thought I said something there.
Yeah, no, it was ridiculous. So around the time that we finished traveling and moved here, I think just before we finished traveling, I released Rebuild 3 and did a Kickstarter for it.
Yeah.
It was Kickstarter and early access. And both of those, I was like an early Kickstarter game and an early access game. Both worked out really great. And I almost included a like full board game version of Rebuild in one of the like rewards tiers in the Kickstarter. And it's really a good idea that I did not, because that would have just been like biting off like way too much. But I was at the time I was prototyping a version of it that was just like fun to mess around with.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's continue on our path towards I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. So, Colin, you've done Fantastic Contraption, and then you did a sequel and a mobile version for both of those as well. But Sarah, you also did sequels for Rebuild, right? Was there a Rebuild 3 as well? Like you did 2 sequels?
Yeah. So Rebuild 2, I focused more on phones.
Yeah.
Because they were doing really well. I don't know, that was like 2011 or so. And then for Rebuild 3, I did a Kickstarter, I did a early access, and I focused more on Steam. That was like, it's also on mobile, and it's actually, it doesn't make any sense, but it's actually selling better on mobile than on Steam right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's,
who knows what's going on mobile, really?
Many years later, it's all very confusing to me, but I don't want to touch it because I'm like, okay, just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah. So each one, like the first one took 3 months, the second one took 6 months, the third one took 3 years. So they really were like getting bigger and bigger, and I was working with more people for them as well, bringing in artists and stuff, not doing so much myself. But 3 got really big.
Speaking of the Scottish Museum, your work is almost like a museum of like what is happening in indie dev at the time as well. It's like both in the amount of time it takes to make a game and the platforms too as well. Like,
yeah, beautiful. Definitely. So Rebuild 3 like did quite well. I don't know if we should really talk about what we're working on next, but I'll probably be announcing it in a more, complicated way soon. But it's I'm making a rebuild.
Yeah. Just I've already told like the progression of indie games as well. Now the very complicated marketing announce and plan and everything.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they do these days, right? Yeah. You get a whole release, like an announcement trailer, and you put it on some giant stage. Yeah.
So, Colin, there's another exciting chapter to Fantastic Contraption, which is you were one of the earliest games on the Vive as well.
When you mentioned it, we are really just like, we're always like riding technological waves.
It's just fun. It's just you hear about a new thing and you're like, let's try this out. So VR was really intriguing.
I was such a VR skeptic, and then Andy got me into a demo at Valve, and then like first room scale hand controllers experience, and it was like, all right, I'll upend my life for this. It's fucking amazing.
They came up here, so Valve's in Seattle, just a couple hours south of us. So we were just randomly really lucky in 2014 or something, or early 2014. They came up for a game jam that was like VR, and they brought a bunch of headsets and stuff so we could all try this crazy new thing out, which was really cool. So we got to try actually making stuff for it too, and it immediately went like, can we have one of these dev kits? Can we just keep it? So,
we'd been jamming on Contraption before the jam, because we went down to Valve, tried the thing. I was like, all right, this is incredible. And then I think Andy might have been like, oh, Contraption would be really good for this. So one of us was like, Contraption would be like,
but you really didn't have the hardware. So you were like writing it blind and just hoping it would run.
Yeah. So we wrote Fantastic Contraption like blind with no VR rig.
Got to this game jam thing and we're like,
hooked it up, tried to hook it all, got it all hooked up.
Run.
And then Chet Falsek was like the, Valve person for that game jam, and like got him in it. And I was like, I think you'll really like it. And he was like, yeah, well, we'll see, won't we? And
that sounds like Chet, yeah.
And then got him in it, and like he finished a thing, and our whole room was like cheering for him, and it was like, and then we got to take home a dev kit, and then continued to work on the game, and then shipped it with the Vive.
It actually shipped with the Vive, so it's like you got a free code or whatever for it. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. I reckon one of the best marketing and PR exercises Valve ever did was getting specific indie devs, or inviting indie dev communities to like come and actually either at Valve walk into that room scale. I remember I went once, and it was like a Cronenberg-esque thing hanging from the roof, and you would like put it on because it had all the big thick cables and everything and that. And it was like,
and there's like QR codes pasted
QR codes, but like on the pieces of paper stuck to the wall, and the handles were all like 3D printed. That were like really cheap 3D printing plastic.
I still have a set of those in the closet right now.
Yeah. And I was like, I was the same. I was like, VR, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then the first time that whale like went over my head, I was like, okay, holy shit, this is wild. And it's the same experience that so many folks have. I remember Jake Kasdal of 17-Bit, who's just done a huge VR game for PSVR. Like, it was similar, when we were talking about VR, it's like, yep, you get in it and then you're like, oh, okay, that moment where the Vive came out and it sort of kicked off that next gen of VR was, I think, really special for folks. I'm sure Chet had a blast like touring it around and just watching people's reactions after they pulled the headset off.
I still think people made more interesting experiences before VR was actually out. I don't know. It's like the weirdest thing. We're like, man, what can you do with VR? All this fucking stuff. Well, holy shit, it's cool as hell. VR's out. What's commercially successful? Oh, shooters and rhythm games. Make anything else get fucked. Like, people just stopped. It's like really sad.
Are people still playing Fantastic Contraption? You see like them in there still making stuff on the Steam counts?
I mean, the Flash version, Flash is obviously dead now. Yeah. RIP. But Sarah did the work to get it onto Steam. So people are still playing the Steam one. That's but like awesome. The VR one is like...
People are playing the VR one as well. I'm actually going to go look at the numbers.
Okay. We had so many great sessions.
Really Fantastic Contraption VR for Fantastic Contraption.
When Flash went away, I moved all our stuff to Steam finally.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Because I felt too bad with things disappearing.
I guarantee Fantastic Contraption Flash is beating.
They're looking up the numbers right now. So now we've done the Fantastic Contraption version, like journey. We've done 1 and 2 mobile VR. We've done Rebuild all the way up through to 3. And on Steam and deploying it there with a Kickstarter and almost a tabletop game. When does I Was a Teenage Exocolonist sort of work its way into this? When did that start kicking off, Sarah?
Yeah, so that would have been after Fantastic Contraption VR came out. Yeah. I think right after. Yeah, I started prototyping. We can talk about what Colin was going to do too, because I was prototyping an art/game experience. So it was going to be like a light, I was going back to the early days of, can I make a game in 3 months or whatever? I ended up spending 6 months on it. And then I canned it because it was too art and not commercial enough.
Yeah, we got really into art VR experiences.
Yeah, exactly. So after that, part of that was the setting for it it was an alien garden. It was this VR game where I think I called it Machete Garden at first because your arm was like a machete and you were like cutting through the alien jungle and like trying to find like rare alien orchids and then go take them back and plant them and breed them and stuff. It was a cute game, awesome. But yeah. But like, I'm not actually an artist, and the amount of art I think it would have taken to be commercially viable was insane. And the way I was doing the art in this weird low poly style was like fun for me, but probably not a good idea for a commercial thing. Good. Anyway, I have a number of things that I might come back to, lots of games I've worked on, but I took some of this stuff and turned it into the setting for I Was a Teenage Exocolonist because I really wanted the idea of like a beautiful alien planet, but the gameplay is 100% completely different, and there's no machetes and there's
no machete arm. Missed opportunity.
DLC.
Yeah,
that's it. Update opportunity. So, Sarah, explain for our listeners who may not have heard of it or played it yet, what is I Was a Teenage Exocolonist?
Yeah, so I Was a Teenage Exocolonist is a narrative RPG life simulator that takes place on a beautiful alien planet where you start as a 10-year-old and you are growing up until age 20. It's extremely narrative, so it's not a visual novel, but there's just a lot of reading in it, like 600,000 words. But there's also a card-based minigame where every one of the cards is like something that happens during your life, a memory that you formed, or a friend that you've met. So those cards become, they get used for like every challenge, everything that you face in your life has like these cards. So
gotta pass a math test.
Exactly. Gotta pass a math test, your little card game.
Get surprised by a monster in the wilderness.
Exactly. Same card game. It uses a little, I love Magic the Gathering. And although this card game is actually like pretty simple, it's a very, very simple card game, but it still has the idea of like color types. So there's like, physical, mental, social, or like the three kinds, because I wanted social to have like the same importance as fighting monsters. Yeah. Although you can't fight monsters in it. So it's a big game. It's about 10 hours long or so, but there is a time twist element, a kind of Groundhog Day, memories of past lives. So every time you play through the game, you can become a completely different person. Like choices, this is like, it's not even choices matter. It's like beyond that. It's extremely dynamic narrative that's being told in like all kinds of little chunks of small events. But yeah, so not only will your choices make you a different person, but the things that happen in your past lives can like affect the future. And you'll remember and you'll be able to like shortcut things and save characters who would have died because they're going to die. Like in the game, they're going to die. So yeah, there's a lot of fun with that. And also it just made the writing even more spaghetti because, only like, you can't tell. In every event, it's like, is the character you're talking to alive or not alive? And do you remember things from past lives or not? And also, what are your skills and what has happened so far in the 10 years it takes place in? To say it's like our most ambitious game is like it's an understatement.
Yeah, it's a long stretch from does the player have key or not? You're really pushing the variable game to its limits. That is something that I've seen, in like the articles that I've read and the response to the game that I've seen. It seems to have had quite an impact on people who resonate that particular mechanic, like where this idea of replaying the game is not just facilitated through some like roguelite mechanic, I guess, or gameplay feature where, you're maybe getting some extra hit points or something like that, but it's actually embedded into the narrative and the actual whole setting of the game. And it feels very natural and unforced, it seems. Did that come about early, that idea, or did that come about through the process of like actually making it?
That all came about like very early. Yeah, that was like the basic chrysalis of it. But over time, the game just grew. Like the complexity just like grew and grew. Like it was going to be a 2-hour, like shorter, tighter loop with, kind of a more puzzly aspect. Like you're trying to get, there's 30 or so different endings. And like, I guess half of them are like, really particular narrative things you have to do. So it was going to be even more complicated than that. And you were going to have to like do this and this and this and this. But but over time, the main thing that changed is that it just became a lot softer. The world is just a large space for you to live in. It's more of like a world that we created for you to like find your way through however you want. And there's less of like a right answer. Because
like you're saying, it's not like a visual novel in the sense where you're just progressing through screens or dialogue. Like there is obviously dialogue and there's interactions like the challenges and things, but you are actually moving a character around the world and around this exocolony that you're growing up in.
The art for that, like one of the first things that I imagined for it was this, it's 2D, like kind of rolling hills with an isometric view camera. And then all of the plants in it are flat. They're all like sprites that are just
3D.
Bordered.
The world is 3D.
Sorry. The world is 3D.
Yeah.
The world is 3D.
Elevated.
Flat with like rolling hills, 3-dimensional. I'm like showing with my hands here, but all the plants are billboarded 2D sprites, and they're waving and they're all beautiful pastel colors, and they have like strange alien kind of bits to them. There's like a bunch that are like kind of sexual because like you're a teenager. We wanted it to be a little bit about like
have that sexual angst and tension in there of growing up on a colony as a teenager outside of Earth.
Exactly. So there's like plants that look like very phallic little plants and stuff. But like just a lot of fun with the art. And so I like really had this image for how the art would be. And I was super lucky to find this like amazing team of artists to actually like make it happen. I haven't just, like I say, very ambitious, like our biggest team. For sure it was.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because as we've heard, it was mostly you two just traveling the world and working on each other's games and, maybe dragging Andy to help you out with something or someone else. But this time, and I mean, you can tell just by looking at the game, I would be gobsmacked if it was just the two of you again on this game. It's like with its incredible painterly like world and the, just even the scope of it, not even in the 600,000 words, but the mechanics and the feature set within it. Tell me about the team and sort of how that came together, Sarah, and building out this team.
For sure. Yeah. So we have worked with artists since the first like 3 games or so.
Yeah, great.
Ever since then, we've always worked with artists. And it's one of the reasons that our games always look so different. For Exocolonist, and like, really amazing, like wonderful people to work with. But we do still like going back to just the 2 of us when we're back in our prototyping phase. So we kind of alternate, and we just couldn't have artists just, don't want to hang out with us through that kind of period.
We couldn't afford to pay them.
We couldn't afford to pay them, and they don't want to just like wait around for us to be like, okay, now to put the art in the game.
Yeah,
so
Skype from a beach in Thailand didn't really work out in the late 2000s as well. We weren't really ready for that. Yeah,
you should see the size of the satellite dish we had installed.
That too, yeah. But for Exocolonist, this started off with finding a concept artist who. Sarah Webb, who I found at our local VanCaf, the Vancouver Comic Arts Festival.
Oh, cool.
And she just like had a booth there. I took one look at her. She's from Alaska, and she draws snow so beautifully. Like just the most, like, how do you have that much color in something that's white, And like, just like all of her stuff, everything looks like an absolute like gorgeous fantasy landscape. And I was like, can you do alien stuff? And so that was like where it all started. And she's just got that kind of like cozy, like realness feel, So like she kept drawing like paper everywhere. And I was like, they wouldn't have paper because it's the future. They wouldn't have paper. But she just kept pulling in elements that just felt real. So there's like robots, but then, and that actually ended up kind of defining a little bit how the tech works in the game. And the vibe of the game is of people who like come from a place that's very technologically advanced, but they're going back to the land. Like they didn't bring much with them because they're kind of refugees and they just barely made it out of Earth. But they're going, like their plan is to let it all kind of fall apart and go back to, a lower level of tech. So it all just kind of worked with the vibe of it. And then, from there, I got a background artist and a character artist and a artist who came in to do monsters, who was Lindsay Ishihiro, who did like some of the final monster sprites, and then kind of dropped that they were also a writer if I happened to need it. And that was just amazingly lucky because I was kind of planning to do all the writing myself. It's a much more intimate thing than art. Like I have a much easier time just being like, well, I don't know art, so you can make all the decisions, and I'll just put it in the game at the end. I'll make it work, and I'll we can do a little back and forth, but like mostly the artists get a lot of say. But for writing, it was just going to be like we'd have to work so closely together that I was just a lot more hesitant to hire anyone at all. But it turned out that like Lindsay and I just like had kind of the same wavelengths. They'd never written for games before, but they'd written a ton of fan fiction under pseudonyms that won't be mentioned, but just like an absolute ton of it. And they were also really, really good at relationships and kind of like emotional mushy stuff, which is not at all my forte when I'm writing. Exactly. So like I was bringing more like, like science fiction-y ideas and weirdness and like big picture stuff. And, a lot of the just like the day-to-day of like what it would feel like to be a little kid running around, like picking up a mushroom, but then it's alive and you have to deal with that. And what are the choices you make, like making like player choices that always feel meaningful and always like bring you back into the agency so that you're not just, stuck in reading reams and reams of text with no choices. So I was kind of bringing that side and Lindsay was bringing their side, and together we just, it just all worked together.
What a great arrangement. I know I'm writing is how I got into games as well. And it was one of the hardest things, I think, as a studio head, and like as you go and your studio grows or as your career progresses and you build a team and everything, and you're letting things go and you're going through this constantly evolving identity crisis. That was one of the hardest things to let go for me. I remember the moment where I was like back late and it was like the 3rd or 4th week that I was late getting Mellow, like, going over lines for Mellow, some Mellow update. And I was just becoming the biggest bottleneck for the team because I was doing the writing, but I didn't have the time and everything. And I just had that moment where I was like, I can't do this anymore. Someone else needs to do this. What am I doing? It's time for someone else to take the writing. But aside from the logistical side of things, like which I encountered, there is also that it's writing, especially a game like this, like I was a Teenage Exocolonist, it's such a personal game. And it's like you say, it's so emotive, and it's so writing is putting so much of yourself into something. So it sounds like a fantastic opportunity that someone that you already had in the fold and a team member and a relationship with them was able to come in with you, as opposed to, it always feels weird to me, like going out and, as a writer, it's a totally natural thing, but it's still, it feels weird going out to someone else and be like, hey, can you come on? And it's a really important relationship to get right. I feel one with a writer that you're bringing on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely feel that way.
Yeah. So another interesting part about the game is this, the card-based stuff. So you actually mentioned before, when we were looking at the physical cards, is the mental, the social, and the physical, again, cards, the red, yellow, and the blue. Maybe can you describe for folks who haven't played the game a little bit about the challenges in the game and how that interacts with the cards and the card functionality?
Yeah. So it took me like 3 tries, I guess, to actually come up with this card game. I had the idea of what I wanted, like how I wanted you to receive the cards, what they would feel like and stuff, but I didn't actually know what the game was until like very late in development. It's one of the last things that I finally nailed down. But yeah, I ended up, I think we'd been playing a little bit of poker over COVID.
Oh yeah, right.
I feel like this is like part of the inspiration was that.
Because we couldn't get together with friends anymore, so we started playing like Zoom poker. That
and
was
then
the way our group interacted over lockdown.
Yeah, exactly. So I had kind of poker in the brain. And I think even before that, I'd been playing some kind of game where you were like given cards and you had to like put them in order, in a specific order. And I've always liked Yahtzee for some reason, which is just like poker hands, but with dice. And so I was like, how do I put these things all together? And that is where the design for the little card game comes from. So every time you run into a challenge in the world, like, like you're babysitting and a kid needs to come down from a tree, you have to like climb up the tree or whatever. That'd be like a physical challenge. So you're given a random set of cards from your deck, which is your life up until now. So at the beginning of the game, you've got these things like, like first words is like one of the early game cards, and it's not worth a lot, but it's cute. And then later on, you'll be getting new cards that are more powerful and like slowly forgetting old cards as well. Just, it's a like standard kind of roguelike deck optimization thing. So you get just a random 7 cards out of your deck of life, and then you've got 5 slots. And you place the cards down in an order such that they interact with each other to give you the highest score. So one card might say +2 if the card to the right is also yellow. Or one might say, +3 to all red cards. And so you have to figure out which of your 5 cards makes the best hand. There's also straights. There's 2 of a kind together gives you a bonus. 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6 in a row gives you a bonus. And if like 3 of your cards in a row are yellow or blue, then you get a bonus for that. So you're kind of making like a poker hand, and you're kind of, rearranging them. You kind of place them and have a little satisfying rearrangey thing. And there's a score that you're trying to beat. If you manage to do that, then it's a win. If not, then losses aren't always even bad in this game, which is an interesting like narrative thing.
Yeah.
But so it's not, and also you play it like almost every day. You've got like one of these little card challenges just to kind of remind you of who you are, what your cards are, what your focus is. If you're into studying a lot, you'll have a lot of blue mental cards, and you'll just sort of feel that your deck becomes like more blue over time, and bigger numbers mean like you're getting smarter.
Yeah, if you spend more time in school, then when you're out exploring and a planet does some weird thing, you're more likely to have some kind of prior knowledge to draw on to be able to solve that problem. But if you're instead of going to school, you're like spending all day at the sports ball field, it's like, you better hope you can like wrestle your way out of this problem, because your blue cards are not coming out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the challenges will give you a big bonus if you have the right color cards.
Yeah. It's a beautiful way of synergizing the the mechanics of something like this. And we've seen it before in games, like even the Elder Scrolls games, like the more you do of this, like the more the skill goes up. But this feels like a way more intentional and way more direct sort of like diegetic or narratively contextualized version of I'm using my past experiences to overcome challenges that are similar to that. It's so beautifully integrated into the game.
One of the surprising things was had to do, it's like a card game roguelike, so you have to be able to discard cards from your deck. You have to be able to burn cards from your deck. Like I was like, all right, well, what is that mechanic called? It's like, oh yeah, forgetting, obviously. It's like, oh, you forget about that. And then didn't really consider how much players would react to that. Like Giggle is like one of the first cards you get. It's like 1. So it's, in the early game, it's a usable thing. But then by the time you're like 16 years old, it's like way underpowered. But like you have to decide to forget that when you were like 5 years old and that like thing that made you giggle, you have to like forget Giggle. And players are just like, I am just not prepared to do.
That's like talk about like facing the realities of adulthood. You're like forgetting how to giggle and the importance of it.
It does. It really does. Yeah.
Amazing. And so what's Sarah, Colin, like what's the reaction to the game been like? Because what you released, was it earlier this year or late last year?
Yeah, it was last August. So
August,
mid-year. So yeah, almost a year.
It's been crazy.
It has been crazy. Yeah,
insane.
It's been really, really good. No, people love it. We got like overwhelmingly positive on Steam, which is like,
incredible.
Like people are just very, very excited about it. Like we just came back from Europe because we were nominated for a BAFTA award and like a bunch of other awards. Like, like it's, the critical praise for it is overwhelming and it's really wonderful.
How long
players? I mean, the numbers and the critical, that's all nice, but like showing at GDC and having people come up and being
what it makes like players feel is actually, it's a little intimidating when people come up and are just telling me how meaningful it is to them. And I'm like, that does come from you though. It's like, I gave you a space to explore that. And I don't want to take credit for it. Except for making people cry, which I absolutely do on purpose. Yeah.
I remember bawling my eyes out to Rebuild 2 as well. Like, I really love what you're saying, Sarah, about it being more so a vessel for folks to realize their own sort of, vulnerabilities or, emotional responses or reactions to certain situations, or to explore that as a, as a form of, using the medium as a form of catharsis almost. Like,
people will say, like, it helped me through grief is like a common thing that they'll say. Because there is a lot of very sad stuff that happens in it, and it deals with grief a lot. I mean, a lot of things happen in that amount of time on a very dangerous planet.
It's true, including losing loved ones, I'm sure, on a very dangerous planet.
Basically, everyone can die.
Yeah. And you were, I imagine folks are coming up, you were on the IGF booth this year, am I correct in saying that?
Yes. I remember. Yes, that's right. Yeah, nominated for Best Narrative and also the GDCA's Best Narrative and Best Games for Impact or whatever they call it.
Spike TV Video Game Awards.
Also at the Game Awards. That was Games for Impact. That's what they called it.
Yeah. Cool. How long was the development in the end? Because I mean, like in the sort of Fantastic Contraption 2 to now, this seems like it would have been one of your longest titles, yeah?
It was 5 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, which is definitely, that's a long time to work on any one thing.
Yeah.
Even if you wear lots of hats.
Were you doing anything in the meantime? I mean, I just yesterday had a chat with Ben Esposito, who's talking about Donut County, and I think it was a similar amount of time, or 8 years or something. But he was like, putting it down in between and doing other things, like making whole other games in between. Were you two like doing other things on the side, or did you get distracted, like, touching up wallpaper or anything during it?
Well, okay,
Sarah was just like cranking on it.
Well, I was running Northway Games as well, so like ported all our stuff to Steam and did some other little things.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I was cranking on it the whole time, as Colin says.
5 years.
Yeah, especially
work.
the last 2 years were during COVID and the like lockdowns, the 2 winters that we were like very locked down here in Canada. I just did nothing else. I was just working like 70 hours a week or whatever, just because that was fun and I was enjoying it and I had nothing else to do. So
that was going to be my
healthy, but
that was going to be my next question. Is like 5 games. I think people can have complicated relationships with their own games. For that take that long to make. But it sounds like did you find yourself like just consistently engaged in the project? Was it presenting new problems and sort of exciting new frontiers for you all throughout the way, or did you go through was the honeymoon period over at some points and?
I feel like I kept it up pretty consistently. I guess Colin can probably.
Yeah, Colin,
I just remember it.
Well, there was doubt. There was so much doubt.
I mean, right near the end was the worst time. Actually, like after I finished the game was actually pretty bad. We just had to do porting, and I was just convinced that it was going to flop and that I'd spent 5 years on something that no one was ever going to get to play. I like completely convinced myself that was going to happen.
So Sarah's
pretty sad.
Sarah has an unconventional playtesting strategy.
Oh yeah, I don't playtest. So yeah, I really don't. I really do not playtest. Right. Yeah, so I'd put like 3 people through it, and Colin had put another like 3 people through it or something, and that was kind of it. And then we did do a beta where it was about 100 testers, and that they really, really liked it. And that seemed like good engagement, but I still was just convinced that there was no way. I think a lot of it was not having released a game in a while and just being afraid of the current marketplace.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Right? It is. It's really scary out there. And we were launching on Switch and PlayStation, and we did get a bit of a like help from PlayStation, a little bit of marketing and some funding, but it still just felt like I don't know, like it could have just completely flopped and like nothing would have happened.
It's so easy for games to just disappear and slip under the water. No.
Yeah, right. And what's this, like 1,000 new games or 10,000 new games a day on Steam or whatever the crazy statistic is probably now. Exactly. It's that oversaturation is just huge. And I think the whole the imperative of wish lists and everything, that indie devs, and not even indie devs, but publishers of particular sizes and stuff, the focus on that, and it's just it is a wild frontier out there, kind of like starting a new colony on a dangerous new planet, venturing out from your little nest, for sure.
Yeah, there is something one of the things Sarah is really good at is like zeitgeist, and I think she has been she's been jury for the IGF a couple times and judges for the IGF, that like a lot of indies judge for the IGF. And so Sarah just like really puts the time in and plays a lot of games for a long time in a very broad section. And I think that having that good an understanding of the ecosystem is super valuable. There's like a takeaway tip. You just like play a lot. I make games that I want to play because they aren't in the world, so yeah. But EXO is kind of like, it's like zeitgeist.
It's very zeitgeisty. It's just totally a game that I would play so much of, though.
Yeah.
It is also very zeitgeisty. It's like there was like an obvious like hole that it needed to be there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, narrative games are starting to do better and better. I'm really happy about that people still want to read in this day and age where everything's a YouTube tutorial instead of a blog post.
Yeah, the TikTok attention deficit disorder, hasn't reached narrative games somehow.
Exactly.
I was talking to a parent and I was like, well, internet, whatever it's done to the humanity, at least everyone is going to be super literate and knows how to read because the whole internet is text. And they're like, what are you talking about? My kids have never read anything on the internet. It's all YouTube, TikTok, video. So much for literacy.
Yeah, that's it. I think. Oh well, the robots are just going to talk for us soon anyway.
Singularity, singularity now.
So, an interesting thing as well about Teenage Exocolonist is this. The the overwhelmingly positive on Steam. It's like the most coveted thing you can have on Steam, right? Is especially post-release when the game's been received like commercially like yours has and everything, and the more sort of reviews that you have, the harder it gets. But I've noticed as well, talking about, you know, these narrative games and everything, that there seems to be like when narrative games strike that chord, they tend to like rate quite highly. Can you put a sort of a pin on, especially as someone who didn't play test their game, Sarah, like now, like on the other side, do you know what it is that, like, are you looking at those reviews and seeing this theme here of like what it is specifically about the game? Is it the level of polish? Is it the execution? Is it the mechanics? Or is there a particular thing that people are rating it highly for?
I think a lot of it is the tone, is the kind of coziness of it. Like I can't call it a cozy game because it really deals with there's violence and there's tragedy in it. There's
fascists.
There's fascists in it. There's colonialism in it, right? That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
And we have a very complicated content warning system at the beginning too. But it does have, I think, that vibe of like coziness that people really wanted, but just with like an extra punch of realness to it. Yeah. But it's like you start and it asks you, you know, like what gender do you want to be? And separately, like, how do you want to look? You can pick your own pronouns. Like there's just, everyone is very, it's almost like a Star Trek kind of utopian way that like no one cares about race and, you know, like sexual orientation or gender is just like, it's all fluid in the future and everyone's okay with whatever. Like that stuff's like not the, like there's no strife there in the game. The strife all comes from these like kind of larger social issues of like human expansionism and, you know, like how we treat the planet and things like that. And also just questions of personal identity and who you're going to be and who you're going to date and love and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's the fact that a lot of the stuff, we just gave people this total safe place, especially when it comes to like LGBT issues where it's just an idealized fantasy world. It's like my personal like future that I hope for people in terms of, you know, everyone being accepted for who they are. And then we can all just fight about, you know, our, you know, whether we think we should kill the monsters or, you know, befriend the monsters or what, just pick up and leave the planet or what. So I feel like
clear cut the forest.
You know, it's just
try
like
to live in the forest.
Exactly. Yeah. Like different kind of issues that aren't, that just aren't as triggering for people. And that, you know, like I definitely like want you to think a lot about that stuff. Yeah. But people can engage with it and they feel, you know, they don't feel like they're being smacked around and hurt.
They're more human concerns as opposed to say like political or identity concerns that we may be, you know, challenged with today in today's society. Instead, it's like political, you know, identity aside, it's like this is a human challenge that all of us are going to face universally if we approach this.
Yeah.
Amazing that folks, you know, we really can't give our players like enough credit. You know, it is amazing how much they will pick up on and how much they will just like not only project into a game, but also take from it as well. It's just amazing. Now, another thing is this was like not like a small commercial release, right? It wasn't like another Flash game that you put out there. It was, you know, you're on Xbox as well. Am I right? Yeah.
No, not Xbox.
No, Xbox. Sorry. No, Xbox. Right. Yeah. And then, but it's like you said, it's on Steam.
It's on Switch and PlayStation as well.
Switch, sorry, I apologize. That was one. So Switch, PlayStation, Steam, but like you said, it actually tackles real mature themes, and it has this soft, organic, you know, like even like the pastel sort of treatment of the art and everything, and the treatment of the characters. One I guess could be forgiven if they didn't think that the game would have like some of those larger themes in there or tackle the things that you're talking about or be such a mature experience. You mentioned putting up something, you know, like a warning to the players or a content warning there. Did you have to do anything with ratings boards or the platforms or anything? Because you've got 600,000 words in this game. Like how do you alert, you know, PlayStation to like all of the possibilities in this expansive narrative branching game?
It was a bit of a dance when we filled out the Me and Becca from Finji filled out our publisher Finji filled out the ESRB stuff together. And it was just kind of like, oh, like it's only so many points you can get here. And then it's like, okay, there's drugs in it, but do we just call it marijuana and I was like, control, like find, like, and replace. I'm like, nope, no marijuana in this game. No, dizzy weed. It's like, how many times do you say fuck? And I'm like, 0 times, because I just removed them all just now. So yeah, there was a little bit of like, we tweaked the game a bit just to make sure that we could barely get, because we really wanted the 14 age rating. Because I just feel strongly that this game's going to resonate with like teenagers.
Well, that's the experience, right? It's the teenage experience on a planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing. So I wanted to make sure that like 14-year-olds and up could play it. So yeah, there was some like wrestling to get it in there. The one of the big problems was that the art style is just so beautiful that
May did such an amazing job.
May did the all the characters, and also the key art and the lovely like store art that just was too innocent. I was the one who like told them what to draw. I feel like I just wanted it to look beautiful and innocent. The first version of our key art that we had for like the first couple of years when people were wishlisting, and it just looks like a game for little kids. It's just like too innocent. And so at kind of like the 11th hour, I remember it as being like late July or something, that May was like, hey, can I do another key art? Like, can I just like try that? And they did this one that has all the characters in it, but they're in the background and everyone's like much older, and it's like dark colors, and Soul, the like lead character, is like very serious, and there's cards in it. And I was like, much better.
It's just perfect.
Absolutely perfect.
Caught the game.
Yeah,
perfectly.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah. And then, and then the trailer as well was like, we had to like really balance like tone and making it look beautiful and making it look, and like who also did the Halderstad, who also did the audio, was one of the people who did the audio for the game, also did the trailer, and was just like, no, we're going to put flashes of like your dad dying of a respiratory illness.
Yeah,
like,
mid-COVID.
Yeah, like, right. And I was like, we can't do this mid-COVID. Like, I actually almost took that out of the game. Lindsay had to fight me to leave it in. But yeah, there's like a terrible respiratory illness like in the game that like I wrote before COVID. But it's magical. It's science fiction, right? So it like makes you glitter, and when you cough, there's like glitter comes out. And it's weird, and it like makes you like get up and want to wander into the jungle. But anyway, so these guys like really pushed it, and were like, let's make it look more adult. And I think that's one of the things that maybe like last minute kind of made sure that we were actually going to be successful, because it's really easy to take a look at this game and just have like no idea what you're getting into, which means that the wrong people would buy it. They'd be very upset by it, and the right people might pass it up. So,
because it's still a thing. Like, we'll still pass a key out to someone we meet at a show, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's great. I'll give it to my little cousin or something."
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, but I mean, how old is your little cousin? I don't know if this is going to be like a particular. I don't know if this is going to be a suitable game.
Yeah.
So Colin, you're saying that the cousin shareware distribution network is still alive and well today.
It's still good.
It's the Vanguard. That's the Vanguard. That's how you make money in 2024.
So you don't need to give me any spoilers. This isn't the Hot Scoops podcast or anything like that. But generally, what's next for the Northways? You're talking about some travel. You mentioned there's games on the horizon. What's coming up, folks?
You want to talk about it?
I feel like we shouldn't talk about it. I feel like we should leave it.
We don't
need
hot scoops. It's fine.
All right. Yeah. We're just starting to work on the next thing. We took some time off. Like we did when we were traveling this time. We didn't stay in one place for 3 months, so we were like, wait.
Yeah, we got nothing done.
We were just on trains all day and like sightseeing and all these new places all the time. So we actually got a real vacation to make up for a couple of years of lockdown and like way too many hours put into working. So that was actually lovely. And we've been prototyping a bit and like have the start of our next thing going. We'll probably announce it.
Got to go somewhere. We got to spend a while there. We got to go somewhere boring.
Yes, it's super important.
So
be bored.
Catch up with finally make it to Australia.
Yeah, that's it. Like, come and live out in the southeast suburbs of Melbourne somewhere. And just like bore yourself to death.
It's crazy we haven't been to Melbourne though, because it's like top indie world destination. There's like more indie games in Melbourne than anywhere else on the planet.
Yeah, we got a hell of a indie game community over here, world class, as they would say. Melbourne International Game Week is coming up, so it's in spring, so spring for Australia in October. So
swim on over there.
Anyone listening to the podcast, any indies, any commercial devs, like let's go. Let's come over to Melbourne. It's a beautiful time to be here. All right, well, hey, let's leave it there. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you, my friends. Thanks for sharing your story with us all.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on the podcast. And
great to see you, as always.
Yeah, and hey, congrats on all your success with I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. I know, like you said, it's a long slog, 5 years, and especially through the pandemic and everything, but it seems like you've made something exceptionally special for a lot of people.
Thanks.
All right. Cool. All right. Have a wonderful afternoon, folks. Take care.
All right. Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye.